every single one of my podcasts now starts with me saying, and now we're recording, which is crazy. Anyway, discussions in education. I'm Tony. I'm an admin assistant principal in San Jose, and this is Florence from my program back in the day, good friend too. Do you want to say anything about what you do? And
yes, I do many things for education.
yeah.
I teach. I teach at Valley High School.
It's okay if the kids come through. Don't worry. It happens to me all the time.
In Sacramento, and year 11. No, going.
Yeah, it would be
going into 11 or going into 12.
I think we're going into 12. We finished 11 dramatically.
That's why it's blurring together big time.
Yeah.
And also English learner program coordinator at my school.
Are you still? What's your time on that? Are you still 100% teaching plus coordinating, or?
I was given it comes with it. I was given
one extra prep,
but I said I'm not doing it unless I get another one. So we're on a block schedule, and instead of teaching 3 classes out of 4 periods each day, I teach 2 periods out of 4. So it's definitely not enough time to do the job, but it's more than, it's whatever.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, so wait, so just out of curiosity, how did your year end? So what were you guys dealing with?
When you say year end, like literally in May, or when things started imploding in March?
When things started imploding in March.
I was home on a Saturday, and my principal group texted us and was like, hey, you guys, check your emails. Okay. So we check, and it was announced that the school was closing for 5 days. And every day we were told, we'll know by Thursday. And Thursday came, and it wasn't until the following Saturday that it was like closure for another week. So we were told to enjoy that week as our spring break. And there was a whole uproar with everyone for many reasons that was not spring break. And by the end of that second week, there was like much longer closures and closures everywhere.
I was going to say that's when the other closures, because you're Elk Grove, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's when you guys were the very first to close, I think.
Very first, and there was so much mess with the superintendent, and he got so much slack for doing that. And then it was like a week later, people were praising the district.
Yeah, of course.
And so we had then, we didn't start teaching until like April 16th.
Yeah, I think that's when we started teaching too, but we closed much later.
Yeah, we had about like a month and a half, which included a 1-week official spring break during the original scheduled spring break at the beginning of April. So from like March, my last day was March 7th, I think, or March 6th, whatever it was. Yeah. And I wasn't even in the classroom. I had 2 sub days in a row for scheduling I had to do. So I didn't see my students since like March 3rd or whatever. And then we had 6 weeks of instruction, and then the year ended May 30th.
Yeah, because you guys closed early, right? Or was that the regular end?
That's when we would normally close.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know some of our high schools close like a week early because they're like, we want to start planning for next year. And I don't think they did that at all.
No one did any of that at all.
No. Well, that was the funny, I mean, just on the admin side, I know my principal and I were constantly like, can someone just bite the bullet and say like, hey, next year we're starting in distance learning? And like, even if like we don't, at least say it so everyone can prep for it while they're still in school. Yep. Like they could have started that in April and then May, and we could have done like, I don't know, online PDs for folks. But no one wanted to. No one wanted to be the bad guy. And I understand, like, there's a lot of political stuff, but at the same time, I was just like, as a leader, sometimes you just like, you
have
eat
to
it.
Make those choices.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to do it. Just like the superintendent. I mean, he didn't make that decision alone, but he got he represents the school district, and
And he's the one everybody's going to yell at.
Yeah, but he did a good thing. I
Yes.
don't know. Totally agree. I know. I don't think anyone was a surprise. I'm not surprised. I could have said in May we're going to be starting distance learning.
Dude, we said it in April. We're just like just based on everything, like this, like, oh, when the vaccine comes out, maybe. Like, yeah, right.
I don't know what people are tiptoeing around, because now it's screwing. I mean, I'm glad this is not your first year as an admin. God, could you imagine?
Oh, I could imagine.
I mean,
People were like, there was a principal job open this year. They're like, oh, are you going to apply for the principal spot? And I was like, no. Why would I? No. I prefer being an assistant principal where like my job is going to be just to fill in holes. Like if I'm the principal, then it comes down.
mm-hmm. Yeah, but I know it's frustrating. I don't know when you guys start, but students are back for us August 13th, and there's
Jesus
schools
Christ.
here. Yeah, there's schools that are year-round track, and the beginning of June they voted to push the opening out a little bit, because I think it was like July 15th or something they were supposed to open. So they're scheduled to open August 3rd. It was like literal 2 weeks, and the district has offered PD this week, the majority of which includes content like how to organize your email, getting used to Google Drive, how to set up Google Classroom. I'm like, what?
But,
I mean, I guess people maybe need that, but like
no, that's a lot of teachers. That's the scary thing. I would say that's 40 to 60% of teachers is like, I mean, depending on the school, but I've definitely been at schools where they're like, oh yeah, like, yeah, my email's a mess. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I have nothing in my inbox. I archive it or I delete it. Like, it's either saved or it's out of there. And they're like, oh, I should do that. I'm like, how many emails? And they show me their email and it's like 12,000 emails. I'm like, okay, I'm hyperventilating. I'm going to walk away for a second. I'll come back and we can start deleting. I'm like, you don't need anything from 5 years ago plus. Like, anything more than 5 years old, get rid of.
I'd say 6 months.
Well, I'm thinking from the admin, so I was like, oh, if you have any parent emails, keep that stuff. Like, you don't know where that's going to go. Like, he never emailed me. No, I have it right here.
I know. No, but just like that, and I guess in my bubble, that's not reality, but I know for sure, like, there were teachers who were like, I guess I'm setting up my Google Classroom, like, because I still obviously in the role of EL coordinator, and people, teachers would email me and like, oh, can you help so-and-so with the translation? Or like, can you help the translator? We have like in class, a couple people who are like, they support students in class, all students, but specifically our English learners. We have Spanish speaking teacher's aide and a Pashto Farsi speaking assistant. And I would get the emails like, can you ask Miss So-and-so to translate so they can log into the Google Classroom? I think my code's right. I never set it up before. Like,
yeah.
And that's a big learning curve, but you got to meet everyone. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the only positive as far as I can see with the whole COVID thing is it really is like a lot of the teachers were like, the district hasn't mandated that I get on tech yet, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to keep doing what I do. And now it's kind of like, get your ass on tech. Like, this is the only option, or retire.
We had some of those too. Yeah.
And yeah, some of them retired. But no, I mean,
No, that's been like a cool thing. And I'm thankful that I didn't have the learning curve of
exactly
how to like get everyone online in a couple of weeks. And,
especially from the distance. Hey, exactly. We've never done this before. Can you get on your email? No.
Oh my goodness, I know. So the time and space to try new things that I would like, my friends are like, we never had time to do this, and now we can play around with it, and like things aren't going to like be awful if it doesn't work. Like, students aren't going to complain, and getting to have more time to do more innovative things that people sometimes in education are very quick to say, nope, that doesn't work. We're like, look we did okay, and there was no testing.
Exactly. Let's get fingers crossed.
I know.
Because they're going to start that testing up and then be like, look at how these kids are doing. And you're like, they lost like essentially half a year of education. So, and more because we're starting a distance learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, that was how spring went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want me to pause for a second so you can?
Yeah, I guess I may have to do that.
Okay, that's fine. 1 sec. All right, so resuming. But so anyway, so obviously as you're coming back, like, what are your worries? Because that's what I'm always interested. Like, what are your biggest worries coming back, and what have you heard other people's worries?
Okay. I think I'm categorizing these worries into like different topics. Like worries like in the immediate right now is that my school district is going to be a little screwed with prepping teachers for returning. And it's really like Ezra is going into first grade and he'll be in my district now. And so like as a parent, I have zero information about what distance learning is going to be like for a first grader. Chris, my partner, can't plan his work from home schedule that his office is talking about for the fall. I can't ask like, hey mom, you want to come up and help a couple days a week? Here's Ezra's schedule. I don't know what the expectations are going to be at all. So that's hard and I'm worried. Also, as a teacher in the immediate, I have zero details about the working conditions because our union is still bargaining that with the district. Mm-hmm. And a big piece that hasn't been decided is if we have to go in person to teach distance learning. The district wants that. The union was like, no, we want flexibility. And that's a huge, like I'm at home and I'm legitimately doing my work, and that's very different than being at home. I mean, being at work and Chris being here with 2 kids all day.
Yeah.
So those I think are the most immediate. And then long-term is the expectations of distance learning. Those were not clear from the spring, and I have no new information either. Like
they haven't shared the state what Newsom and everybody else tagged on yet. Though to be fair, I don't think my district has shared that with teachers yet at all, and I'm just like super on it. So,
I mean, my department chair was telling us that they're supposed to be like COVID. She called whatever they're calling them some cute, fun little name, but like COVID priority standards, which I think that's helpful so teachers know how to focus, because it's not the same as teaching in person at all. Like it's not. You have to prioritize on what's most important.
But even then, like I would like to think that as a high school teacher, you guys were, I'm like, definitely as middle school teacher, I'd be like, I can't teach all these damn standards. There's like 250 standards.
Correct.
We're teaching like 50 of these. And here, the most important ones are these ones.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, across our departments, I know that happens. Like their site. So I don't know. Again, I don't know what that means. Because I don't, like you said, like, well, we don't teach all like 9th grade standards in 1 year anyway. Like,
exactly.
So that, I think then like long-term worries is my like 3rd category is when/if things do return to in-person, like what my teaching assignment will be. Because I requested to teach distance learning, but I have no doctor's note or high risk anything to merit that. And then, so if things
but you are tech savvy.
I am.
So you won't need training.
I know. I'll save you money.
Yeah, I mean, districts are definitely going to be looking at that. Like, you could look at like all the ones that are like, because most of the ones who are like, oh, like I can't do it for health reasons. They're going to be older. They're probably going to not be as technology savvy on average.
I have no idea how that's another piece that we're supposed to be informed about is like our assignment. Like right now, everything's distance learning, but when things open up, you might be distance learning teacher permanently, like for the year or whatever,
Yeah.
or the transitional model, the hybrid stuff. And depending on how the students at the school select their preferences, you'll be teaching maybe students from a different school. Like, I have no idea. And that's not my job to assign students to teachers. And so, yeah, that's one worry-ish, more like anticipation.
Yeah.
And then
You're like, that's going to be a cluster.
Just like my site admin, I'm nervous how they will be handling all of these things with the return in person. Like, they're nice people, and I've worked with some really like very, very bad administrators. Like,
yep, those are fun.
Like, and then some, like the school that I was at in Emory was like, in Emeryville, I had the best principal I've ever had, and I hope no one ever tops her. So I kind of like was coming from that. I'm like, no, like my admin, they play it safe, and like you kind of said earlier, like sometimes you just have to say what you're gonna do, and people can like cry and pout about it, but if you don't like step in and say this is what we're doing, you don't get things done. And so I'm a little nervous about my admin's organization in maintaining safety protocols and communication when we do return in person, because it really sucked in the spring. And I know everything sucked for everyone in the spring, but I was like, come on, admin, like something.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, we feel bad. So like, my principal and I, like one of the reasons that I told him to apply for our school was because one of the things the teachers were saying was like, we just want more transparency. We just want more communication. I was like, literally, that's what this guy is getting in trouble doing at this other school. So let's bring him in, because this is what you guys actually want. So we brought him in. And then during this whole pandemic, like we would communicate stuff out as like, immediately. We're like, hey, like this doesn't need a meeting. This is just an email. Hey, quick update. This is what we should be doing. Blah, 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 blah. Please approach it like this. And if you have any concerns or you see any issues, email us back and we can set up a meeting and we can try to figure out how to deal with it. And everyone was like, okay, great, we'll get started. And then like literally like a week later, like we would get, you need to retract everything you said. None of that applies anymore. And so, I mean, we were constantly like going back to the teachers and just saying like, okay, guys, we're all about transparency, but this is really jerking us all around. And so we do have to start holding the cards a little closer to the chest, because now we need to vet this to make sure this is the actual requirement, protocol, whatever it might be, before we share it with you guys. Because we don't want you guys to do all this work that we've now done like 3 different times and then have to do it again. And so they were understanding, but it's been
and that's
crazy.
Helpful, that message. I don't know when that conversation happened with your staff, like my principal.
April, spring break.
Okay. So we had I don't know if you guys had staff meetings. We had none. The only meetings I had, no staff meetings, none. And I had I had asked several times, like, can we please have a staff meeting? Like, I'm on our leadership team because I'm the AEL coordinator. And so it's this weird in between. I'm not quite a department, but
you have an important job, so you got to be there. Yeah.
So if it weren't for those meetings, I would have been like even more clueless about the things. Never had one staff meeting, and it wasn't until we had a leadership meeting actually last week, my principal was like, no, like I want to be very clear, and I haven't communicated much because I know things are changing, and I want to be mindful of that and not get people's, like basically the same thing you said. And it was so nice to hear that from him. But I'm like, dude, this is middle of July. Like, and I get that, like, everyone knows that things are changing and no one has answers. Like, we get that. So it was like the next day he did send out an email, like, explaining that, and I don't say like apologizing, but like holding the accountability, like he knows that maybe wasn't the best thing, but here's why he was doing that. And it was like literally either 6 hours later or the next morning it was made, the announcement came out that the county was starting in distance learning. So he's like, see, I told you everything's changing and da 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 da. But stuff like that, or like there was really
that's hard. Yeah.
No plan. Like it was really difficult to figure out what to do when you didn't hear from students at all during distance learning, and it kind of fell on deaf ears after a certain point with our admin. I was like, we have to have something.
Yeah. They didn't have like their attendance clerks or anything, like calling kids, or no? You don't know. You don't know.
Because there was never follow through other than the names that I would send to my admin, because that's what we were told to do. And after a certain point, like how many times do I need to email the same things? I don't know.
Yeah.
So being 3 weeks away from this with still no like foundational plan. And even if we weren't starting the year in distance learning, like I don't know how anyone would have thought we wouldn't have distance learning at some point.
Yeah.
In all of this. And you had the whole summer to like put a plan together.
No, I you know, it's one of those things. And the funny thing is that, I don't know. I mean, it's all across the board. I hear like all the teachers and obviously Lily, you know, telling me like everything that she's worried and concerned about. I mean, her biggest worry is she can see how the classroom would work, mm-hmm. and she could see how like full distance learning works, but she has like a lot of serious concerns about the hybrid model, because she thinks it's going to end up being like 10 times as much work for teachers, and they're not really seeing that, especially, you know, just because it's like you're planning for,
there's no information on that. That is completely new.
Yeah. Well, that's why I did the podcast with Emily. I was like, oh, Emily's been doing it, but hers is like it's a very specific style where it's like they have a curriculum available online that it doesn't sound necessarily like the teachers are leading or creating the curriculum for at-home teaching. They're just creating the curriculum for like the 2 days of in-person. Like I realized after the podcast I did with her, I was like, wait, I have all these damn questions I forgot to ask. God damn it. But
part 2.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I gotta ask you some more questions. But no, I mean, it's just, I know on top of all of that, I mean, like there's a part of me that's fundamentally disagrees with an admin who doesn't even at least do like check-in meetings with all their teachers. Because I mean, this has been rough for kids and families, but this has been rough as hell for teachers too. Yeah. And like, I know that my admin and I, it was crazy rough on us, but we were trying to do, I mean, every other week we had a staff meeting, and most of the time it was like, hey guys, we actually have like literally 5 minutes or 10 minutes of information for you, but like, what do you guys need? Like, what's happening? What are you guys worried about? Like, what are the concerns? And a lot of them was like just basic stuff like, hey, grading. Like, what does it mean by this? Hey, what do we do for, exactly. What do we do for kids who, you know, aren't contacting? This kid is still, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, okay, well, we're trying to contact them, but it's not like we can do an in-home right now. Like, I can't go to their house and visit them. So we'll just do our best and we'll document that we did that, and then we're good. But no, I mean, the whole thing was just, I mean, it was traumatic for everybody. And literally, like, it wasn't until the end of June where my principal's name is Tom, where Tom and I could actually like sit down and just be like, let's do our check-in with each other and then just get it out of our system. And then we had to we both kind of left the digital world for a good week and a half. Because we were just like, we can't, we need to get away. He literally went camping up in the Sierras, like just him. He's like, honey, I need to get away. Yeah. His wife took the kids and he left. And I was just like, yeah, I mean,
I know I've noticed that I'm in just more recent meetings that have been happening. People are like, oh, how's summer? I was like, summer? This is blurring together. I've been checking my work email probably as much as I would be if I was at work, and no one's asking me to, but there's just always just
No.
no off.
You want to
So,
know. And like it's one thing when it's like, you know, a regular summer where you're like, oh, I can go on vacation. I know exactly what I'm coming back to. But you
yeah.
can be like, oh, I was offline for 3 days. What happened? Oh, Newsom just made an announcement. And like now everybody has to shave their heads before they can come into, because like COVID sticks on your hair. And you're like, what? Okay. We're all going to be bald. All right. Like some of you have an unfair advantage. I mean, you can see that happening.
Exactly. Exactly. So I don't know. Just trying to like process all of that, and at the same time, like just settle with it, and things will fall into place in a way, and I can't control a lot of it, any of it really.
Yeah.
So that's been also like the complete other end of it. Like the last few weeks, having moments where I was very like, oh my God, we can't go back to school. Like they need distance learning. Like there's been such long school board meetings, all of these things, you know, texts with work friends and just everything. But also then like, okay, hold on, the things work out. Like here we are in July doing all of this. And at the beginning, you know, in March, April, it was very hard, just all of a sudden, like stopping life as you knew it and doing all of this. And that was very hard. But like, we're in July and figuring out new ways to do many things. And yeah.
Well, I think on top of that, I mean, there's everything else that's going on too. Like, I know you've been posting a lot of stuff. Some of our posts have come to a head. No, I'm just joking. But I mean, like, you've been posting a lot of stuff, and like I've definitely been posting and watching a lot of stuff. And it's like, okay, so not only are we dealing with like just this constant existential threat about like what in the hell is happening in education, but then it's just overall we're like, what in the God is happening in like communities? What's, you know, why is everything like, and we all know why, because people finally have the time to sit, unfortunately, and I'm going to be honest, a lot of middle class people finally have the time to sit and see and watch these videos that are just horrific.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait, what the hell? This has been happening I thought this stopped a while ago. It's like, no, it still happens a lot. And so, I mean, that's the funny thing is like, you have a very different experience, I think, with like on campus. Do you guys at your high school, did you guys have on campus cops?
We had,
or a community resource or whatever.
Yeah. Like the SROs,
yeah.
I mean, there were sometimes you'd see the same officers that would come to the school, not a heavy police presence, but they're in our district. Like, okay. Yes.
Yeah. Were they, I mean, did you have much interaction with them? Did you know what their role was, or?
You know, no, I didn't push to ask the questions because I didn't see them that often. And it was, again, like I probably could remember 2 or 3 consistently, like when they were there, it was like the same individuals.
Yeah, it usually is.
So, well, yeah. At Emeryville, when I was teaching there, the principal who was there for the first half, or I don't know, 2/3 of my first year there, anytime there was any kind of conflict, he would call the cops.
What?
And this was like unfathomable reality, it was like an all-black school. So, I mean, that was a completely different experience with police in school. But I'm saying this having as a white person, having no adverse interactions ever with a police officer. It doesn't appear that they have like a negative, the officers who are, when they're at the school, that they have a negative like presence there. But I don't know what that means to my students who are Black and brown. And I don't know.
Yeah. I think, so I've been in middle school for the past 11 years. Mm-hmm. And I mean, at one of the middle schools we have a community resource officer, but he's usually between like 7 schools in San Jose. Mm-hmm. So it's like he covers like 4 middle schools and 3 high schools. So you never see him really. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, they're generally like super busy. They come in to like check in and just say like, hey, how are things going? Or is there any trends you're worried about? But like literally, I think this last year was the first year where we started seeing like more of a police presence, but it was the Guardian Angel program. And so that's something like San Jose started specifically just to deal with like school shootings. So they don't respond to anything. Like if they came on and you're like, hey, like this kid just stabbed another kid, they're like, was there a gun involved and did they attempt to kill multiple children? And you're like, nope. And they're like, we don't deal with this. We are purely like, we are emergency response for school shootings only. And so I actually kind of liked it because I was like, oh, so what's your job the rest of the time? And they're like, oh, literally we just go around, we just hang out, we talk to kids, we sit in your parking lot for a bit and we just, we're there and then we're good. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I think like as an admin for the past 3 years, literally, I think we've had to call the cops maybe 4 times, and 2 times were inappropriate photos on a phone of each other. And it's like, oh, we have to report this. Let's get, and the officer was like, can I see the phone? Oh, damn it. I need all these pictures deleted. And then I need you to show me the phone. And then I need you to go to the cloud and make sure that they're deleted. So it's like this whole process. It's just like, okay. So it's like child porn, we call them for. This last year, we had a student threaten another student over the weekend, kind of over break, but posted it on social media of them flashing a gun and saying like, I'm going to get you. And we're like,
can't do that.
Crap. Yeah, exactly. Wow. This is a kid I was so sad about that one. It's like a kid I've been working with for the past 3 years. And like each time I'm like, come on, man, I just need you to control that urge. Like, please think, if you got a question about what you should post, come and ask me. I'll tell you post it or don't. And he's like, I mean, like we found him with all sorts of stuff and we've kind of worked through and just provided him supports. And then just this one where like, crap, man, come on. And that was like in November. I remember being super depressed at that point. Like
that's also such a heavy time in the school year all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the holidays. They love being home. But yeah.
That's intense, but that's good that it sounds like there's a resource for support.
Yeah, I know. And so, I mean, that's the thing for me. It's like, I know that like you've shared a lot of the defund and like kind of more of just like the violence, but you also have like a very different experience, especially in Emeryville, with that essentially a trigger happy principal who's just like, oh.
And I just think though, like, as you were saying, that the Guardian Angel program, like how much is that a necessity? And how much money does that cost? And where else could that money be going to support resources in the community for education, so violence isn't, an issue in our communities, and support, like the student you were talking about, that incident with November, like what other resources could he have possibly, had access to? I don't know what your district.
That one.
But,
that one would have been a hard one.
Okay.
No, I mean, for me, I mean, I guess my part is that, like, and I've mentioned this a couple times, is that like when I'm talking with educators, our biggest complaint is how little we're funded. You know what I mean? Like, and how difficult it is and how much work we have to do. And how much more we could do if we had like 3 more teachers or like, like 2 more social workers or, et cetera. And so I think there's always that part of me that's like, I haven't seen anything get better with less money. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just, and I have a number of friends who are, first responders, not only cops, but like firefighters too. And like, they're always like working like triple doubles, because they're like undermanned on the force. Like, And so that, I mean, like that definitely, like having lost a lot of sleep as an admin and as a teacher, like I know that when I come in that next day, especially after being a parent, where you're just like up all night, you're like, I haven't really slept for the past 3 days, guys. And then like somebody does something, and I'm like, well, you just shut the fuck up. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm sorry, man. I'm not angry at you. I just, is
Just
everything's happening. And the kid's like, all right, I'll be quiet though. You're like, okay, this is gonna take me like a month now to fix this, but I mean, so that's the thing. It's like I understand where you're coming from, which is like we definitely need those resources. For me,
Mhm.
I'd rather take it from the goddamn military because I'm like, why are we in other countries? We can't even fund our own shit. But
Mhm.
but I also understand, like, I mean, there are situations where cops are not needed. We need something different there.
And I mean, a couple of months ago, I remember kind of when a lot of the protests and a lot of this started coming out. I remember sitting and talking with Chris and was like, what does that actually mean? Like, defund the police? Like I had never really thought of that. And so
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of learning, and I have a very different perspective. I didn't even like think about that concept before, and just,
Investing in other areas with that
yeah.
money.
And
Yeah.
because my kind of first response was like, you can't do that. And then it was like a couple weeks later, you have like major cities cutting their contracts, and universities and cities like changing their budgets and putting it elsewhere, and just stuff that I keep coming back to. I'm not an expert on any of this political stuff. I'm just learning.
No, I'm
And
just curious.
yeah,
But you've
but
been researching it, so it's...
just that with a system like the police, if it's not abolished, a lot of the issues with racism and violence will never go away, because it's so rooted in schools and communities. People are so attached to, what do I do if it's not safe? And a lot of that definition of safety comes from a white middle class perspective, and what's even perceived as safe or a threat. And I don't know, one of my friends up here was saying a while ago, when all of this is going on, like a friend who's in law enforcement and likes his job, is proud to be a police officer, but she was like, he'll be the first one to tell you that, hell no, we're not adequately trained to
Oh
do
yeah.
crisis intervention. And like, I mean, things that, yeah.
Well, from what I understand, they're not adequately trained at all.
Mm-mm.
So first off, I was talking with somebody. Didn't One of my friends is not in education, was just like, because we were talking about the same thing. I mean, who's not? If you're not talking about this right now, you're kind of an asshole. I don't know
Yep.
what to say, but no, we were talking about it, and I was just like, you realize that teachers get like 10 times more training than cops, right? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, first off, we pay for our credentialing program. I was like, and so let's say maybe I don't know if they have to pay for police academy, but I'm going to say most of the time probably not, because they're so actively trying to hire them. I was like, the shortest programs we go is 1 year, July to July. I was like, the longest I've ever heard for a police academy is 6 months. I was like, most of our programs for certification are 2 years. I was like, and then when you become a teacher, then you have another 2 years with a mentor teacher, like who's just like, you are teaching, but you're also constantly being mentored. You're meeting weekly. You're doing this. Cops don't have that. I was like, maybe they get training, like some specialized training at points. Maybe they have like a mentor cop that they get partnered with. I was like, but that's not guaranteed. That's not steady across departments. I was like, but I don't care where you go in California, you're going to go through this experience. And then literally every month we have a scheduled like professional development. Even if it's useless, we still have it. Even if it's like a 3-hour waste of my goddamn time, we still will have that PD. I was like, but like that's not necessarily for cops. At that point, they get trained based on where they put the gumption in. So like I do jujitsu, and we have like 3 or 4 cops there, and they're spending their own money. They're learning that, and they're specifically like, one of the reasons is like, listen, I don't want to feel unsafe in a situation and do something stupid and kill someone. It's like, but now I'm trained. Now I know, like, okay, if I do this pressure, even the most like peaceful person is going to react violently because they're like, they feel I'm going to kill them. It's like, so I won't do that pressure. I'll do something else. And I'm like, yeah, like, so, I mean, I definitely agree. I think we need to, I think community resource officers shouldn't be necessarily police officers, but they should be, like you said, like trained social worker, crisis intervention workers. And I think one of the ideas I was floating with my principal, because he was telling me that for firefighters, one of the things they do is they have their local stations, but then what they'll have is like a station that specializes in like super high needs things. So it's like, or like super specialized things. So it's not like 5 stations with like a super high ladder and like 5 stations with like like an excavator for like, you know, a fallen building. It's 1 station. And so when that occurs, they call that 1 station. I was like, oh, that'd be much better if we had like just more of like community resourced policing, whatever you want to call that, training. Like I know that everybody's using the example of Camden, but like more of that style of policing where it's like your job is to be out in the neighborhood, get to know people, and try to stop stuff before it happens by just talking with people. But then I'm like, you're still going to get like, you know, even with all of that stuff, you're still going to get violence like you are. So it's like, okay, then get that highly trained group who like spends like 60% of their time training, and then 40% they respond to like actual situations. I was like, but that should be like funded in like one area, multiple departments fund it, and then whenever they need them, they call them. And he's a pretty conservative guy, and he's like, I would be okay with that. I'm like, yeah, like, wouldn't you? Like, I'm like, seriously, like, he's like, I mean, you know, he's a gun owner and all sorts of stuff, and he's like, oh, you know, if somebody comes in my house, I'm going to shoot them. It's like, okay, like, fair enough. I was like, what about this situation? He's like, I'd be okay with that. I'm like, okay, well then, like, I don't know why we can't. I don't know. But the problem is like all this requires like compromise on some folks' parts.
And right, understanding. Like I just finished. Was doing a book club with some work friends. We read How to Be an Anti-Racist, and just the idea that understanding how it's not just like white people that benefit from racism, like we also suffer, we white people, me, also suffer a lot for racism, and understanding that as ways to see that shifting policies that do uphold racism actually literally benefit all people. And it's not that you're going to be losing all your things and you got it, but that things will actually be better for literally everybody, including white people. And yeah, because I'm kind of stuck on that idea, like, how are you going to get the people, like, you know, that individual or the people who feel like they don't have to bat an eye at any of these things. But I think it was a shift for me thinking like, well, there's lots of ways that policies in institutions, or it's police or something else, that create advantages, yes, for some people, but also a lot of disadvantages. And those aren't always what's highlighted, because if that's what was focused on, I think it maybe be easier for people to call out a lot of the racism that are in a lot of policies that keep a lot of these things the way that they are. So
no, I mean, you know, I agree. I mean, but the funny part is you know, my favorite response when all of this really, like, when, I mean, it's always come up every time something like this happens, the response always comes up of like, well, you know, more white people are killed. And then, you know, like, you know, and that, you know, I'm like, okay, I agree. Like, a lot more of you are killed. I was like, so wouldn't you like better trained police so that you don't get killed? Like,
Is that okay with you? Right,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Like,
It's like, well, now I
okay?
care. It's like, when did that happen? 3 years ago? Okay, so then why didn't you lead a protest 3 years ago? Like,
Yeah.
just like get with it. I mean, and I think the message of like, Black Lives Matter, I think like, I would say, I would hope to say, okay, this is me being super optimistic. I would say like 80 to 85% of America is like, absolutely, like we get it. There's a very large vocal part that's like, no. But I think of that 80%, I think another 40% agree with like the organization of Black Lives Matter, which is like a lot of stuff is coming out. I don't know how true it is, but a lot of stuff is coming out now of like how like kind of pro-communist they are and stuff like that, and how they're
More political.
training Marxists. And like a lot of people are like, whoa, no, not cool with that. So I think that's where you get like another split. Of course, you have that. See, and this is like I said, I was super optimistic. I know that realistically, just even in my own experience, like, yeah, I know that number is a lot lower.
I mean, I understand. I would even,
but I would
don't
say
know. Maybe you're 80% like, yeah, we feel good, we're saying this.
Yeah.
But then actually understanding what that truly means. It's not just
I know what it means. It means
put
I
on a
can go
t-shirt.
and, as a white person, loot a Nike store, blame it on black people. No, just joking.
I know, yeah. Like we feel good. It's a feel good thing to say. Like you said, you're kind of. I was talking to Chris a few weeks ago about this, and just kind of like, like you already had said, who's not talking about this? Like a couple months ago, of course, people are having these conversations because these things weren't fighting for these things, because this isn't new. These things have been happening for a very long time, but it wasn't mainstream conversation. And now you're seen as an outsider not talking about these things, but it's more than just, like, yeah, Black Lives Matters. We feel good. We feel good when we say it. Like week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, whenever it actually was my birthday, there was a surprise Zoom call with friends from all levels of things. I ended up chatting with some of my friends from my old school for quite a while, and they're both Black, and they were telling me that people who they are like not even in contact with anymore have been like calling them, like, how are you? I'm so sorry. Like, really? Yeah.
I love it.
I was just like, what? Like, that makes people feel good that they're like doing something.
Yeah.
It feels good to say the hashtag or, but
yeah.
When it comes down, like you said, to really examining what these demands are and what it truly means for Black lives to matter in a way that is not how it is right now, that causes lots of discomfort. And yeah, that would be cool if it was 40%. Maybe it's 80. I bet it'd be like a lot of people support Black lives now. I was listening to a comedy sketch, and I don't remember his name right now, but it was from like 2016. Damn it. I don't remember the name. I don't remember his name. But it was when the protests were much closer to when they were like Trayvon Martin, and when it was much, much more fresh, and literally the same conversations that people are having now. Like, why should I have to say like my life actually matters? And it was just very weird to hear. It could have been something that someone made and did a show last week, but it was from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and the same kind of pleas for almost just like, I felt like, understanding and compassion to start with, let alone truly supporting it in a way that isn't just like feel good.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean, and I think that's, I mean, so this whole thing, I mean, has obviously also made me like pretty introspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I would not at, at any point compare, you know, my experience to uh, like a Native American or Black person's experience at all. Like, sorry, just
Mm-hmm.
like some people are scared of me, but most people just, I get more of the exotic response from folks of like, oh, you're so exotic. I'm like, what the
So you pass.
I was
You're
like,
there, right?
I was born in Arizona. Like, I grew up in Sacramento. What the hell are you talking about? They're like, oh no, so exotic. What other languages do you speak? I'm
Yeah.
like, English. I tried to learn French. I hated my teacher, so I forgot it. Like, I don't know what to say. Um, but I mean, in the introspective part, there's a part of me that's like, okay, we are calling out cops, and like you said, like they are. Their job is to whatever you want, uphold the law that were passed by wealthier folks who obviously, like a vast majority of those tended to be white, just in history. Sorry, it's the, like, study
Mm-hmm.
history, folks. If you're unsure about that, like, that's
Mm-hmm.
just the way it is. But I also look at schools where we're governed by the same goddamn things. And I think that's where I'm having like my hardest, like I'm having like my moment of like, and I remember, I swear to God, I think you and I and a couple other folks had this conversation when we first got into this program, probably with Chris too, like, of like, we very much wanted to like change the system and we didn't want to become complicit in it. And like, I very much had to like, and I'm still having that debate in my mind of like, have I become complicit in this system? Like, I've changed things the ways that I could, as much as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, you know, I hear so many people, like especially parents, complaining about like, well, you know, look at this crap they're learning in school, look at this and look at that, blah 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 blah. And like, all of that's legislated. Like, teachers aren't just like random. I mean, we do all the time. Sometimes we're like, screw this, like, you guys, like something big just happened. We're gonna take the time and just talk about it because it's important. And those are good teachers. But like a vast majority of teachers are just like, what's today's curriculum? I got that worksheet. What is it? The fourth week of May. Let me get those worksheets out. Let me get that. Here's what you guys got to do. It's due in a week. I've already got my rubric. I've used this rubric for 15 years. We're good. And I think that's where I'm having the hardest part is like, we can call it cops all we want, but realistically, it really does start with us more than with cops.
I think I'm also at the same kind of intersection, and I've used this time downtime, summer / distance learning downtime, to kind of like figure out what this means for me as an educator, because I feel like, and of course as a parent, because that's always, but like, you know, I'm where I'm at and what I value is very much rooted in my role as an educator, and like what this means when I show up for my students, for my colleagues, for my principal, like all of the layers of everything, and like what this is supposed to mean, because I feel like I should be, I definitely could be doing more, not in the sense of like more on my plate, but thinking about the ways that like I have been complicit, and like, you know, doesn't mean running down the hall every time, but really thinking about ways to have sustainable change, and it not just like what I do in my bubble of a classroom, because that's easy. That's like the comfort, like you can do that.
We can break those rules. That's easy. We know how to put the performance on when the admin comes through. And
right. But for that, you know, 70 minutes or whatever, 90 minutes you're with your students, that's such a tiny moment. And in just some conversations in my book club stuff with one of my friends, she was saying how like students have told her like, they're like, oh, we don't like coming here to learn. Like, there's some of her Black students have told her that, like, it's really racist here. And kind of just, she was like, I was like, what do you mean? You know, in her space of like not fully understanding some of the things that are said by a lot of the teachers or not said. by teachers, and being aware of that, because most people, just like, I'm also now reading White Fragility, which I have very mixed feelings about, but I'm reading it out of curiosity. That's my disclaimer.
Okay.
But just that
I've not
people,
heard good things about that book, and so like it sounds like
you said you have not.
I've not heard good things. Like there are some people who are like, "Oh my god, it's like really changed my perspective." I'm like, from what I hear, and like take this with a grain of salt, but from what I hear, it sounds like a really racist white woman was like, "Let me write a book about how fragile I am," and it's like, you're racist. Like I don't know what to say.
I'm just very thankful that this is not my starting point in my learning and unlearning, because so many things. But my district is doing a book club on it, so I was curious as to like how they're approaching it. So I'm doing it with my district, which is
well. Let me know how it goes. We can do a second episode on that one at some point.
Absolutely,
that'd be great.
I'll be done reading it in the next 2 weeks. So
we'll give you more time. We still got to worry about the beginning of school. So. But anyway, mixed reviews.
Just the point that, what was it? Maybe it was How to Be an Anti-Racist. Now I'm going to be mixing them up. I'm pretty sure it was White Fragility, but just people associate with being called racist like as a bad, and like you're a bad person. And so most people walk around like, I'm not racist, like, and not doing like overt racist acts. Like most people don't do those kind of things. Like I'm thinking the people that I work with, like I think they're like, they're good people. You know, there's issues everywhere with so and so or that or this. And how could I be racist? All my students, I don't have any white students. I can't be racist. Like that mentality as like a stopping point. And I had it when I was teaching in South San Francisco a couple of years ago. We tried to have like actual equity work. And the principal, the whitest man in the suit, like in the room, stood up and was like, well, I have Black friends. Like that was where we were at there.
Good time.
Just appalled that I still remember that moment. So just like that mentality of like, well, I can't be racist because I teach these students. It's like, that's not what this is about. And so I think figuring out for me what this is going to continue to evolve and look like, and thinking more not just like on my classroom level, but I guess policy, or like, okay, what kind of curriculum is my district pushing? If they've made these statements about supporting Black lives and like they've publicly said these things, and now they're doing these book clubs, okay, so where's the accountability then? Like, okay, so you're giving us this curriculum, well, how does it help our Black students? Like, how does this absolve racism? And that's, to me, like huge questions that
check that box.
We feel good because we read, we feel good that we read these books.
We had a referendum. I don't know what you mean. We said we're not racist. Right. No, I mean, that's, you know, I have a lot of mixed feelings on those books. And I mean, even, listen, like, I have a very weird perspective because I'm, you know, half Vietnamese and half white. I grew up with my two white parents who, you know, very much, you know, to their credit, you know, they did try to raise me in a colorblind way to some extent, of like, you know, because they're like, oh, and I think it wasn't until like college when I was like talking with my dad that he was like talking about stuff. He's like, what are you talking about? You never experienced that. I was like, Dad, I'm not white. Like, I love you, man. Like, I love you, but I am not white. Like, this, not white. Different experience, sir. And he was like, oh, goddamn, I didn't know that. I mean, like, he knew that, but it was like, he was just that realization of like, oh shit. And I mean, that's the thing that I've always, like, I just have a really weird perspective. Like, I very much know how the system works because, again, growing up with my two white parents who are middle class, like, college educated, like, you learn how the system works, like, because I'm immersed in it all the time. So I learn aspects of it. And there's parts I didn't learn and other parts. but then the other part that I think it was probably a unique experience for me that I think other people who are like Hapa like myself is that like not belonging,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't like, you're not black, so you're not hanging out with the black kids.
Mm-hmm.
You're not Asian, because all the Asians are like, I mean, even in the Asian groups, like sometimes there's a hierarchy of like, ooh,
I
I'm
know.
Japanese and you're Vietnamese, so this isn't gonna work. Like, there's that aspect of it. And so like when people like, I don't know, I very much started at the like, okay, like pretty much. I remember remember Avenue Q, and they had that song. It's at that Broadway play, Avenue Q. Everyone's a little bit racist sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I was like, that explains why, like, when I tried to hang out with this group when I was a kid, they were like, no, we're good. And when I try to hang out with this group, they're like, nah, we're good. And I'm like, okay. So, like, people could be like, oh, maybe it was you. I'm like, I was a kid. Like, I wasn't an asshole yet. That came later.
Maybe it was you. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, some people will think that. But,
Yeah.
no, I
Well, it's
mean,
easier to dismiss it than lean into the like, wow, what actually was happening there. Like,
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Is like I got her from a lot of fun, exciting sides, and everybody's experience is going to be different. But it's
yeah.
funny. Like I was very much here. Like I was much more extreme when I'd say like even like 4 or 5 years ago. So 4 or 5 years ago, I distinctly remember on like one of the very first podcasts that I did, I was talking with my friend Vern, who's Filipino,
Mm-hmm.
and my friend Jimmy, who's black, and we're sitting there and we're talking about everything. And I started off with something like, "So, all white people are racist," and I remember they kind of looked at each other and looked at me, and they're like, "Bro, no, like no, no." What the hell are you talking about? I'm like, what? You guys don't agree? Like, come
Mm-hmm.
on, like, and because a lot of it was, I think, kind of reading a lot of literature and like just being immersed in a lot of stuff where it was like, okay, like this is how it is. Like, white folks are just racist and blah blah blah, and they're like, that makes no sense at all. Like, think of everybody is on a grade. Like, you can be anywhere on that grade. Like, don't speak in absolutes. Like, that's just not how it is.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who have sacrificed way more than you have ever sacrificed for
Mm-hmm.
your rights, and they're white. So how are they now racist because of that? And I'm like, oh, damn. So like they brought me back a little bit more to the
Mm-hmm.
moderate side. Um, but that's kind of where I find myself in a lot of these conversations, or like not even conversations, because I'm just watching shit online where I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
damn, like, like, can we find the middle ground of like, I think the book that also helped me kind of realize a lot of stuff. Have you heard of Daniel Kahneman's like Thinking Fast and Slow?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So he's like a neurologist, or was he a neurologist? I don't know what the hell he is. Um, but he wrote this book. Essentially, it's just about how the brain works.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally, and like I read it because I was like, I want to understand better how like my students' brains work, just in
Mm-hmm.
general, because I'm already getting to know them, but I know I can be better at this. Um, and he essentially says like your brain is kind of divided into like a part that thinks quickly
Mm-hmm.
and a part that thinks slowly. And the part that thinks slowly is awesome, but it requires a shit ton of energy, just a ton. It takes a lot of time. Like when you get that hard math problem, you're using your slow thinking and you're like going through it, and like afterwards you're like, oh, I have a headache. Like, why am I doing this? I
Mm-hmm.
hate math. He's like, the fast part is that part that's like, oh, it's safe to go outside today because like, it's not cloudy, whatever. Or he's like, it's also the part that like, depending on how you're raised, looks at people and is like, I'm going to cross the street or not. And so I think for me, like, I like thinking of racism in that terms, the terms of like, you're not, like, just because you're born white doesn't necessarily mean that you're racist, but
Mm-hmm.
that environment you grew up in has trained you to think quickly and respond in this way. So like, why are you responding that way? Just think about that. Use the slow side of your brain for once. God damn it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's helped me like formulate more. And I don't know. I just wish that was like a broader message of just like, I mean, especially as an educator, like I can't think of anybody being, okay, there are some people I think are irredeemable. Like there's a big report in San Jose about Presentation High School. Did you hear that one?
No.
Like they hired a law firm, I guess, because of so many misconduct things. And the law firm was like, yeah, you had like 6 teachers molest kids and you did nothing. And then 3 of those are still in education because you didn't even file reports on them. And that got to the Mercury News, and that's a big thing. So, yeah, right? I'm like, oh, fuck. Okay, so they might be irredeemable in my eyes, just saying, mass murderers, that sort of thing. But I think the biggest problem I've had with like this movement and some of the conversations on both sides has been this just like this adamant, like, this is how you are. Like,
yeah,
and I can't believe that as an educator. I just can't.
I appreciate that a lot, and having just spent lots of time thinking and reading How to Be an Anti-Racist, like if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend reading. It's very, very well done, and it's not an end-all be-all like any of these pieces of reading. But
you mean it's not perfect? Then I don't want to read it. No.
Don't do it. But it just was such a great balance of like Ibram X. Kendi's own personal narrative of like basically when he was young and even starting with his parents' history, and by the end of the book he's at like his essentially present day, but his own learning and unlearning about race and racism and being anti-racist, and it goes all through college, but also like lots of history woven throughout, and just the idea, like huge takeaways. One, white people are not the only people who are racist. There are plenty of Black and Asian and Latino and Latinx, and like anyone
Everyone
can be racist.
Depending on your circumstances, you're probably racist.
Yes.
A little.
And you can be racist in one moment, and he is like, there's no I'm not racist. It's either you're racist or you're anti-racist, because it's an action. Like you can't just not be a state of not being racist, because that's associating like meaning and moral values.
That's that bystander thing, essentially, is what he's saying, right? Like,
yes. So in any moment, someone can be racist, and the next moment they can be anti-racist. And he even, like, openly admits this just about his own self. And I think that fluidity allows, I would hope, allows for people to understand that it's not in like an attack on your value, but an awareness of what your actions are doing or not doing and how you play into that. And it's fluid. Like, a social activist fighting against, whatever, could be really racist. And maybe they're fighting against racist policies and having lots of moments of being anti-racist, but it's something that a person can obviously unlearn and change. It's not a fixed.
Yeah.
It's not fixed.
Well, I think the best example of what you're talking about was like Chaz, right? Up in Seattle, when they had the what is that? I don't know, something autonomous zone up there, or Capitol Hill autonomous zone in Seattle, where they a bunch of protesters took over a section of Seattle, and they're like, no cops are allowed here. Like, you guys are all racist pigs, get out of here. And then I think it ended, 1, because they threatened the mayor, but 2, because they straight up executed 2 Black kids who stole a car and were driving around all unsafe. And I was like, wait, why aren't you started to fight the racist cops who murder Black people? And then you're just like, all right, well, I'm going to kill these 2 Black kids. I'm like, that's racist. You can't do that. And awful. Like, you're awful people.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like you're saying, like, everybody goes back and forth. And I think if like people understood that more, or if that was more strongly a part of like the message of like, listen, we all screw up, we're all assholes sometimes, we're all racist sometimes, but we're also awesome sometimes. We're
Hmm.
also not we're anti-racist, like you say.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I think like a big shift also is I'm not racist, but I'm being anti-racist, because to me that is so much more of like, that's a very clear action, and it's a lot more for me. I think it's a lot more difficult to say I'm being anti-racist versus I'm not being racist. Like that passivity, like I didn't do it. I couldn't be me.
yeah.
And
Or
so
even like, I mean, I've definitely been in that situation where you're sitting on a bus and you hear somebody say some fucked up shit to someone, and you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna keep my head down and not
mhm,
say anything and just ignore it. And then you're like, oh, well, now this poor dude who maybe worked all day, or this lady who's dealing with a kid or something, that now has to listen to this person be super racist. And it's like, okay, so then I am being complicit, like, because it, especially as a man, like,
mhm.
it's much safer for me to stand up to another man than it is for like like a female next to me to stand up to a man, because you guys don't know what that dude's gonna do to you.
Mhm.
um, whether you're white, black, or any color, like they,
Yeah.
we're well known to be a little crazy sometimes. Now I'll probably get some flack for being like sexist or something, but it's true. I'm sorry. Um, no, I mean, I don't know. I mean, and see, and that's the thing. Is like all of this, plus worrying about like, I mean, the one thing that I am happy that we don't have to worry about is like feeding our kids. Like that's one stress right now, that like even with all the crazy stuff that's happening out there, like I'm not worried about providing right now. But a bunch of our students and their families are.
Mhm. I know that I can't. Oh my God. Sorry. My cat, a giant cricket, just like crawled next to my cat. I just was watching all of this unfold.
did,
Sorry.
did he just eat it?
It like hopped and he kind of freaked out. I'm like, this thing was like probably this big. I just was like, so, um, yeah, I can't imagine that. That's another huge concern with all the inequities that we people in education, pretty much, I would say 90% of us are aware of like the issues that exist. And again, all of this is being exaggerated, and some people are like so surprised about some of the things that are coming out in the open because of all the distance learning and the issues and complaints, and like, really, like, this is nothing new. And now just like a lot of the other social inequities and job loss and food scarcity and everything that has come to the surface for people to see who don't have to deal with these things,
Oh yeah.
all the COVID stuff, like the food thing, I don't know. Yeah. The school district here, they're still providing meals. They've done it since the day they close, and they're doing it through the summer, but they have it open to any like school age child. And
Yeah.
so I do not need to get my children food, but we walk over to I live right behind a high school in the district, and
Yeah.
not work, and we walk over and get the lunch and the breakfast every day. And some days I'm like, okay, for like a 3 and a 6 year old, fine, that's a great amount of food, but like, this is the only meal
Oh,
that a high school age kid's gonna have. Like, and some days the food's kind of like, grateful for the food, but like if it was me as a young person going, even as an adult, like, I have to eat this, like, you're either gonna eat it or you're not. And
yeah. No, it's, I mean, and then that's the truth. I mean, we were doing that. So our local district is Alum Rock, and one of the schools nearby. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's like establishing a routine, just like going to walk. We got lunches. They didn't do breakfast, unfortunately, because I guess kids can just starve in the morning. But um, so we would go
really, I
for
mean,
lunch, and that's what like. I mean, also half the food was like super spicy, and so like So like my wife
Yeah.
and I were like, well, we can eat this, but the kids, like, they're they're and they like spit it out. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
well, you can have, I guess, like the carrots and stuff like that. Um, but I mean,
Same.
I do remember being at my campus one day because my campus was a site where they were doing the free lunches as well. Again, any school age kid.
Okay.
And I remember like the delivery driver being there. And like there was a family that came through, got a bunch of lunches, like 5 lunches, because they had like 5 kids in their car, and drove off. And he turns to the lunch lady. He's like, "Hey, those folks were just over at another school. Like, he's like, I just came from there. They're getting double the lunch." And I was like looking at the car, and it was like pretty beat up. And I was like, you know what? Who cares? I was like, I guarantee you they're all eating it. I was like, and so if that's what they need to do in order to, one, like, ease their budget, like, I would, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, if my kids were like super hungry and I couldn't afford food, I would go to every single school that had food and I would get all of it. I would jump between districts too. I would be like, look, back and forth,
Yeah.
get everything. And then at least I know, it's like, oh, if I can't make it tomorrow, if I have to work all day tomorrow, my kids
Right.
are going to be able to eat. They'll have food all day.
I doubt
So,
that they're running out of food. I think if anything, there's always leftover food. I mean,
well, yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Is like you can also shop around a little. You're like, oh shit, today this district has like a real size hamburger. Oh my god.
yeah, but yeah. Who cares? It's go get the free food. Like,
Pretty much.
so I
You do what
know.
you got to do. I mean, that's the hard part, and that's the thing that like while I'm stressed and while I know like a lot of teachers are stressed, there's also a part of me that's like, guys, like we don't have it that bad. Like we can all stay at home. We can all do our jobs from home. We can, you know,
We have a
we're still
union.
getting paid. Yeah,
Like,
you got a union. I got to say though, and I will say this every time, CTA really, really, really fucked up with their distance learning protocol that they sent to everyone. The the no the requirement for no video conferencing.
I
So
how much I followed that.
oh,
I
so they sent
like,
like back in, I think in March or February, or like when this stuff was coming pretty hard, they gave like every union in the state,
mm,
CTA affiliated, they sent like a guideline of like, hey, this is what our recommendations are.
mm,
Um, and one of them was like, they were saying like you cannot require teachers to do like online video conferencing with their students. Like they can
like online and like live instruction online like that. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
uh,
and like trust me, I understood it. I was like, okay, like because you don't necessarily want the kids seeing your house. There's all sorts of reasons for it. But I was also just like on the other end, I was like, dude, you now are going to have a huge optics issue. I was like, because I know a lot of teachers that did not do any video conferencing. Um,
I didn't
and
know that that's where it came from because there was gray area from our district / union also with
yeah,
that. Not like there was never a you're required to have live instruction. That it was kind of left open to you, and a lot of, well, you might want to keep your video off. I mean, just, don't
yeah, that,
record this, don't have this. I'm like, what? We've been using Flipgrid all year. The students are recording their videos anyway. Like, all just kind of weird things that came up.
yeah.
um
Well, that's where it came from. And,
uh,
but I'm like, for me, like, I know so many parents who are just like, because the thing is like, yeah, okay, that's great. But then like, Lily was on every day for an hour to 2.5 hours with kids, like helping them out, doing the lesson, that sort of thing. I know plenty of teachers like who did that more or less. I'm like, I mean, there was all over. And then you had teachers who like didn't
yeah.
video conference once, You had teachers who just would like post assignments or email them out to the kids,
Yep.
and then say like, "Oh, email them back," and then wouldn't
Yep.
even grade them and send a response back. So like the kids are like, "Well, did I do okay?" I was like, "Well, no, you did it." It's like, okay, but
Yeah.
like parents are super pissed about that. And the thing
Well, what do
is
you
like,
think was happening in person in those classrooms? That's the
well,
other thing.
exactly,
Like,
yeah. Yeah, well, and
uh,
that's the thing. So it's like not only are you like now like it's super transparent like for
mhm.
parents which teachers are good teachers and which like good teachers, because there are generally like teachers who got overwhelmed with the tech stuff. Like maybe they're great in the classroom and built strong relationships and had great discussions, but they didn't really use tech that much. And then when it came to tech, they just like freaked out maybe. But I think a lot of it, like you said, is like teachers who just like,
You saw it show up in I'll use I statements.
yeah,
The situations that I was aware of where there was little to nothing happening with distance learning, it was just a complete transferring of what was happening or not happening in the classroom, but into an online setting.
yeah,
Like whether it was a learning curve for technology, like there were plenty of there, yeah, it was
yeah.
just,
No, I agree. But the real funny thing is, so that I actually saw, I would say 3 or 4 of my teachers
mhm.
actually kind of do the reverse, where it's like in the classroom during the school year, I wasn't actually very impressed,
Mhm.
but like they got super into distance learning. They got into like making the videos and like track, and they're like, oh yeah, like, and I was like, you kind of like this better, don't you? And they're like, yeah, this is great. And I'm like, okay, like good. Like I'm glad you like it because it's probably going to be our reality for a bit.
That's
Um,
cool. Yeah,
but
I
I
mean
would
the
say that's unusual. Like that was not the
yeah,
typical. And I agree. Like
yeah.
again, my friend who's got I think he's got a kindergartner and a second grader,
Mhm.
and he's like the kindergarten teacher on all the time, reading them through, just
Yeah.
checking in with them and just having conversations. The second grader's teacher Friday at like 11 did one 15-minute Zoom, and most
Mhm.
of the time she was late to it.
Mhm.
And she would like send out one assignment over the week. And so he's just like, dude, and the problem is that, and again, this is why I kind of am saying CTA is at fault here. It's like by putting that out, there's so many times they go to the parent community and they just ask for like, hey, we need your support with this raise, or we need your support with this, or we need your support with that.
Mhm.
And like they have given all of their opponents, anybody who wants to stop any of that, literally the perfect tool of like, hey, remember when you like teachers are asking you to be for them, there for them now. Remember when you needed them? And I'm like, shit. Because the problem is like as an admin, I want like okay, selfish part. I want you guys to get raises because that means I get a raise.
Mhm.
Like like I want like you guys to get stuff because the happier teachers are, the better they do their jobs. Like
Yeah.
that's
Like any job. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And just I just know that now, well, we're in for a fun ride,
Yeah,
especially after the
exactly.
budget freeze leaves.
Ugh, I know. It's, I'm nervous being at this point on a calendar again with no expectations. Me personally, I know what my expectations are. Like for,
Yeah,
it's hard to do distance learning, but at least I felt like I really did the best that I could, and I want to continue doing that, but without a statement from the union, without a district like set of expectations. Grading was a whole shit show. I think I remember posting something
yeah,
at one point on Instagram asking like, what are people doing? Because
yeah,
we had a suggestion because
yeah,
we were still giving grades. We were still required to do attendance. It's like
yeah. Good times.
just, I don't know. So I'm just worried. I
Well,
wish parents were getting sets of expectations, like especially at our school, like ways to be involved with your distance learning, or what is this supposed to look like so parents know,
yeah,
like if your phone number changes, here's a really easy way to get this to the school, like just Just
No, there's so much that needs to happen, and I'll let you know exactly when you're going to get it. An email August 12th.
February.
No, just joking.
Would you say an email? What?
An email on August 12th.
I was gonna say February. That's what I.
Yeah, nice. Like August
After
30th.
four
You
committees
should have
have
been doing
met.
this.
I mean, yeah, seriously, that's how this district is, which is good and bad. Right now, I think it's really bad that it's so bureaucratic.
Well, I mean, you also have an enormous district. Like
I
that's
know,
yeah.
but
Like
right now is not. I know.
I know. I mean, that's the hard part. Is like, and then that's the other thing too. Is like what we're dealing with is like there are, like a bunch of families that want to come back anyway, and so it's like, okay, well,
Yes.
you can't, and they're like, well, then I'm pulling my kid out. It's like, okay, but like, where are you gonna go?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But a shit ton of private schools are gonna be in person.
I've been seeing that. Do they? And it hasn't been changed that they have to.
No, they're
You're
private
right, because
schools.
so Ezra went to private school for kindergarten because it was full day, and kindergarten in the district here was like 2.5 hours a day. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And it was
Well,
like
that's
about the
helpful
same
for no
cost of
one.
childcare and whatever. I never thought I was going to be sending Ezra to private school or any of my kids to private school. Another story for another day. But I still am getting the emails, for like opening up. The principal did just send out one yesterday or today, very recent, like, we're still working with the guidelines, like, if you choose to have your child go into our online academy. I'm like, and I'm in some Facebook groups with families from his preschool class, and it's the same company that has an elementary school. And so as soon as the district was making decisions about even just the parent survey for the options and what like a potential hybrid schedule looks like, it was like instant on this group. Families were like, well, are you guys going to put them back into X name of school, the private school, because 2 hours is not enough instruction time, and I've heard that X private school is going to be giving full day instruction still. And I was like, oh my God, another layer of inequity. So you can have all the families who can pay for this full day education to pull the kids back. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, I mean, and my biggest thing is that, again, I still feel a lot of what we teach kids that's legislated is useless. Like, the kids know it. And so it's like, I'm almost okay with, like, right now, if we came up with our critical standards, because honestly, the critical standards are all going to be the skills. Like, I could care less what you actually teach, but if you're teaching them like these important like skills of like, deciphering, breaking down, whatever, analyzing, then you're doing that kid a service. Like, that's your actual educating. But it's not going to happen. Like, the standards that they'll probably end up focusing on will be like standards that repeat through multiple grade levels. So they're like, oh, we need to get this foundation piece, so it like they'll hit it again in like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 12th, whatever. But with like really not thinking about like, well, how can we get outside the box?
I hope,
I don't know.
I don't think that's like one solution for all the issues, but I know for teachers who are and were still trying to plow through their curriculum as if they were in a classroom, that is not okay for students.
Well, this is definitely the axe for that. Like, anybody who comes back after that and still tries that shit, like, we're like, what are you doing?
Still going to be those teachers. I mean, they're not going to adjust the grading. Don't even start.
My favorite are so I was always bad with like student names, but I told them to give me a hard time. Like, I'm just like, my memory sucks, guys. Like, I'll remember your names. We'll get last names down. It's just going to take me a long time, and call me out on it. If you hear me saying like, hey man, like, what do you think this is? You say like, hey man, what's my name? And if I can't answer you, you know, go ahead, give me a hard time. And so like the kids love doing that. So I learned their names pretty quick. Um,
Works.
but I'm like, I definitely knew a couple teachers who were like, number 13, because it was a number on the desk. So they would just be like, number 13. And then I
Oh.
was just like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
66741. I was like, have you read the school to prison pipeline books at all? No? Okay, shit. Let me introduce these to you because they
Wow.
exist.
God. There
Yeah.
must have been a lot of learning in that room.
There was, you know, the thing is, kids will always learn something. It's just not necessarily what's on the lesson.
Academic learning, maybe
Yeah,
not so
exactly.
much. Yes. Life skills, probably plenty.
Oh, yeah. I was like, that's been the weirdest part of being an admin is like pulling kids in and like the type of honest I am with them is like, I expect more from you as a 12-year-old than I do from XYZ adult. So I need you to please figure it out because like I know you can do it. I have no idea what, and they give me that look like, what the hell? And I'm like, I'm just being honest.
I know.
Like adults aren't perfect. Not everyone's, gonna be cool.
Oh, I get crazy eyes when I think I still get mistaken for a high school student when I'm at school. Just when I first started teaching, I was like very offended. I was very offended by that when I first started teaching, and now I'm like, why was I ever upset by that? And I just people assume that I'm just young. I'm young, but really they assume that I'm young. And so when I say I'm a teacher, there's usually an assumption that I'm an elementary school teacher. And I'm like, no, I'm a high school teacher. I get like crazy eyes usually, like, what's that like? And I'm like, it's good. Working with the adults is what's the hardest part. Like, no joke. And there was a minute, and I don't know what I want to do when I grow up yet, but there was a moment in a lot of transition last year or a year and a half ago where I was like, maybe I want to do admin. And I think like what I realized though, I like will have to interact a lot more with not just people in my department or the friends that I feel like are like-minded, but the difficult, those people I'm like, like the stories that my sister shares from her office job, like I know those things exist in my profession, but I'm not around adults that often. And usually it's the people that I want to be around, not you.
You can choose your circle.
So that advice to your young scholar, he may or she may probably be like, what? But like, that is so true. Like, yeah, I can't tell you what they're going to do, but I know you have the ability to like do better. Like,
I've legitimately told kids, I was like, listen, if you get in like a X, Y, and Z situation, I'm giving you permission right now to walk out and come directly to my office. I was like, I don't care. Like, come here. And then if the teacher or a substitute has an issue with it, I will tell them, like, I told you to do that so that you don't react poorly.
Yep.
And they're like, are you sure? And then, they try to push it every once in a while. They're like, I came, Mr. Alberts. I'm like, what happened? They're like, I was just having a hard time. I'm like, okay, be real. Like, I didn't want to do the homework. I was like, okay, get your ass back to class.
But I mean,
like,
too,
this is for real stuff, but
they don't come rolling in also is, I think, a shift in their accountability and their behavior. Like, oh, like someone actually, at least one person's actually paying attention to what I'm doing, knows I can do it.
Yeah.
And like, it sometimes is scary for younger people to hold themselves accountable to their actions as opposed to making that shift in behavior. And
well, and this is like a parenting thing, but there's like definitely like, and I know I'm sure I'm guilty of it too. But there's it's like you accidentally instill a fear of failure in them sometimes when you're like, just based on how you react to like a situation where you're like, God damn it, just like go handle it. Like, what? you know how to wipe your own butt. Like, just wipe your own damn butt. Like, you know, like, and they're like, no, you know. And so it's like, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but definitely like a lot of the kids I deal with are the kids who are just like, I can't do this. And I'm like, yeah, you can. No, I can't. Like, no, you absolutely can. Like, it's 100% in your ability level. No, I can't. I was like, okay, well, you're just going to fail before you even try? Yeah, because I'm a failure. I'm like, oh, shit. So I was like, that's literally my job as an admin, at least an AP, is like, I am not trained to be a social worker at all, but that is 90% of my job. And that I have to do for both students and teachers. That's the exciting part. But that's the weird thing. It's like when you have an admin who does that, like our school climate has like shot through the roof because like they used to just take it out on the kids. And I tell them, I'm like, if you're having a rough day, just come to my office, scream for a bit. Like if it's in like in my principal, like this is our policy. Like anything that's said in the office, we don't. And some people might disagree with this, especially like the anti-racist part. But like anything you say in our office is confidential. Like if you're not saying this to kids, you're not saying this to anyone else. You can say anything you want to us. There won't be repercussions. You know, just get it out of your system. And so, I mean, we've had teachers make like crazy turnarounds, and we're like, all right, like if you could be loving and caring and like handle your stuff in class, and you just need to come to us and, you know, shout about how this kid is like a fucking idiot and like stuff like that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, you know,
That's
we all
doable.
have that, you know.
It's free. But there's no training. There's no staff meeting. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. But again, like I have to provide the same service to kids because like sometimes they need to come in and be like, this teacher's fucking racist. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, they're always yelling at me. I'm like, so they're racist because you're Mexican and they're yelling at you? Like, let me look how many other Mexican kids are in their class. 20 other Mexican kids are in that class. Like, all right, so maybe it's not like the racist part. Maybe there is a little bit of that. I don't know, but like, let's look at like what actions are occurring here. That is, I swear to God, though, that is students' favorite thing to accuse teachers of being.
And that, yeah.
You're all racist.
That's hard when there's that seriousness to it, you know, like, because you know these students experience it every day.
I do, but I know the difference between like
a teacher doing a racist action.
Yes.
Yeah. And sorting through that and really going underneath, like, okay, what's actually going on? Usually it ends up probably being, like I got in a fight with my mom on the way to school.
No, that's 100% it. And that, but then also again, it's the teachers on the teacher's part too, which is like this kid comes in slightly elevated, like not at their usual. Teacher's not checking in with kids. They don't know the kids that well, some of them. And so then treats that kid as normal, calls that kid out, that kid overreacts, instead of the teacher just being like, yo, pause, come talk to me. Like, what's going on? Oh, that sucks. Okay, I'll go easy on you today. Here's some work, sit in the back, put your headphones on, just kind of zone out, calm down, and then I'm going to check in with you in 10 minutes and bring you back to the class. But, like, you know, they freak out instead, and, you know, that's that thing. But, I mean, honestly, for a lot of students, at least in middle school, they know that it's kind of like a hot button word, so they like using it. And I would say, again, 3 years now, maybe 2 instances in those 3 years have, like, my principal and I sat in his office or my office afterwards and looked at each other and been like, yeah, that's fucking racist. We're going to need to write that one up. You know, and it's like, like it happens, but shit, dude. Like,
is that the root of what's actually happening? Oftentimes not.
Yeah. No. You know, but everybody, I don't know. It's all crazy.
Yep.
But I mean, I'm worried for you. I'm worried for all teachers. Um,
I'd be worried as an admin. I'd be worried for you too. I mean, like,
no, but see, I'm an assistant principal, so I think that's
you
why,
just
like,
get to, like, yeah, thumbs up.
yeah.
That's all good.
Well, all I feel is useless. So like, I just happen to be a techie, so like I can help folks out, and I know like there's going to be a lot of protocols that need to happen. Um, and like, if you think there's a bunch of stuff that hasn't been communicated to you, trust me, like my principal and I are like, oh shit, like this is going to be a fun one because we have to get whatever that is, quickly break it down, and send it out to teachers in a way that they're going to
Yep.
be like, okay, they don't feel overwhelmed.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and
I
they're
mean,
still going to
that's
feel
a lot.
overwhelmed.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but
That's a lot.
I mean, but realistically, when like shit hits the fan, that's also part of why I was like, no, I don't want to be an admin yet because I'm like, huh, oh, you want to talk to my principal? His extension is over there. His office is over there. Like, no, I just handle this or whatever random stuff. But you know, the best part of everything, and I don't know if it's suspended. I don't think it is. My middle school is getting a federal audit this year. So is it a federal
Oh,
audit or
we're
state
getting an
audit?
EL audit. My principal, I don't even know what the heck it means, but he's told me we're getting an EL audit. They're still coming and doing those things.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
like, I just know that means somewhere it's going to be more work for me to, like, I don't know what it means yet.
No, it is.
Our
It
school
is.
has
It's going to be
been,
more work for
he put
you
in
and your
quotes,
admin.
he was like, we were randomly, quote, selected. And maybe he's, my principal's a lifelong English learner. So I read it as like randomly, but
Yeah.
maybe it was just him typing something differently. But just, he knew at the beginning of June, we were being selected for an
Yeah.
EL audit. I'm like, what? How would, why? Who? Really? Now? Like,
Yeah. No, and I mean that's the funny part is that those people still need to work. So they're like,
well,
oh,
damn it, I'll hold up a bunch of files on Zoom for them to see. What do they need to like?
I mean, that's really it. It's like, well, you know, and trust me. So I don't know if they've broken down the attendance thing for you, but the attendance thing is going to be crazy this year for
No,
distance
we
learning.
haven't heard a peep
So
from it from our district yet.
so this is from the state. This is not coming from your district. So I'm sure your district is trying to figure out how to break it down. But from what I understand, is that in order for student attendance to count, they have to be at every Zoom meeting. So, okay. So, I mean, they have to be at the Zoom meetings, but also it's now also requiring work completion. So if the student does not complete 60% of the work for whatever days that are, you know, at home, then they are not considered, they won't have attended that day. And I'm like, whoa, what? I was like, there are some kids who just come and sit in class and stare at you.
Yeah.
I was like, and like, I try to build it up with those kids, but like, hey, everybody's got a day. So yeah, so not only are teachers going to have to do attendance, and even if there's a day where you're like, oh, we're doing like staff meetings this day, so we don't have to meet with any kids. I know at least in elementary, you are still expected to check in with every kid.
We have a day, again, so many unknowns. We have like
one day. Yeah,
the
you
one
should have
day, I think ours
one
is
staff
Mondays,
meeting
where
day.
it's like, it's literally like distance learning TBD. Like no one
Yeah.
knows what the hell that means, but it's still like a student instructional day.
Yes.
That's crazy
So it
because
still counts.
that's interesting that that's coming from the state when I haven't, I'm sure there are districts with more clearly outlined plans, but how can I don't even know like what the expectations are for live instruction on Zoom will be. Like,
yeah, well,
so,
wear clothes. I mean, definitely wear clothes.
don't smoke
Yeah.
any pot on screen.
Yeah,
Maybe.
just,
Might
I mean,
connect
you're at home, so you're
more.
like, whatever. I'm not on campus.
Oh my God. Like,
That's a brilliant idea. Thanks, Florence. Time to have a discipline meeting. Anyway, I heard you were bringing weed to school. I don't even know why you're on campus. Stop coming to campus.
oh my God.
No, I mean,
No,
it's,
really, that's really interesting.
yeah. So
That
this
would
is the
even,
first. So it's like a combination of actual school, but also independent study in that way.
mm,
But I don't, it's, the whole thing's going to be,
yeah.
I think that's where a lot of my work is going to be, is taking that load off of teachers. But I can't honestly say that all APs are going to be doing that. And so that's where I'm like very worried about, especially like large schools, because having a teacher, I mean, I can't imagine like being a teacher right now and having to track 160 kids distantly and calculate how much of their work that's done and then give it
There's
a,
no way people are gonna fly with that. Like,
well, they don't have a choice.
I
That's what's
know.
legislated. I know, that's the crazy part. It's like, oh well, we don't want to do that. I mean, like if CTA says that, then technically if we don't do that, we just lose funding. So I mean,
Basically, if you have a D,
you're in
you get
attendance,
president.
but if
You're
you're,
president.
you have an F, then it's like you never showed up at school, which is kind of true. So I'm really hoping that teachers like find a way to engage,
It is, but
but
associating. I mean, also on the flip side, and I don't think I had. If there are teachers who grade without, I think, a clear and more uniform grading policy, that also
yeah,
is really fucked up, because there are teachers who like I'm thinking like, well, if a student's failing, maybe like they didn't do so well. But I know in my classes, if like a student's failing, I'm gonna be like, hey, we have to look at what's happening. This isn't working. Like,
yeah,
they're not going to fail because they're doing work. But like, there are teachers who give the one test. And I heard this past round of distance learning that if a student didn't log on during this exact window of time to take a test, the teacher no longer allowed them to take it. Like, all kinds of really
oh
fucked up
yeah,
things. And students failed because of that, or how this impacts English learners in classes where the accommodations aren't being met for their instruction, and they're not getting the right
oh
supports. And I
yeah,
mean, just
none of that's happening.
that's
Let me
really,
tell
I
you.
think, a very loaded way to take attendance, and
Yeah,
easy for teachers who don't care about putting in the extra work. So like, well, they weren't here. I know
well,
teachers.
it won't be easy because for those teachers, that's when the principals and admin, I guarantee you, we're going to be writing folks up, because if we're like, I'm sorry, like you haven't reached out, you haven't done this, you didn't provide support, this
Yeah.
kid can't complete the work that you've given them, which is not at their level. Um, like, and you are now actually losing the school money. Like, I see everything's fun and games until the district starts losing money. And then they're coming down on you like a hammer. I can almost guarantee that. But
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
who knows? Oh,
Yeah.
girl, it is hella late.
I know it is. Look
I'm
at that.
sorry.
That's okay. This is great. I'm happy to chat all of this. Like, this could be hours.
I know. I'm like, oh, we'll do it. We'll do another one at some point.
Yeah,
But
I love
are there any final thoughts that you like? Are, I know that you have 1,000 thoughts, but is there any like final one that you're like, let's leave on this?
I have to have the confidence in myself and hopefully in my school district that things will settle in the best possible ways they can for students. Because otherwise we're really failing everything. So that's, I don't know, just, I think, like I said earlier, trying to be patient with the process and not get too stuck on how is this going to work out? How's that going to work? Because no one knows. We don't know.
No, I mean, the one thing I am very confident in is, despite what they think, is teachers are way more adaptable when they're supported than they think they are. The hard part will be is that there is a lot of like unaddressed trauma already in education, both for teachers and students, and this is going to exacerbate that to a degree that I don't think. I mean, that's the thing. It's like we talk about cops not being, again, prepared for their job earlier. We're not prepared for the level of mental issues that are going to occur, even just based on like the 3-month break we already had. And those kids are very resilient and very powerful, but also have been immersed in the same stuff that you and I as adults have been immersed in for the past 2 months. Because I guarantee they're on social media and they're reading everything and they're seeing all the videos.
Yes.
And like, if their family's working full time, then they're not really getting much support as far as it goes. So, we shall see. I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll meet. Maybe we could do another podcast in like
I was just
September or like, August, and we're like, oh, it's awesome.
I was gonna say like in like 4 months from now, like, give it a couple of months, like to like okay, looking back at this, how did it all?
I mean, who knows? Like I said, maybe in like 4 months when we meet, I'll turn on the video and I'll be like, oh shit, I was right. And you'll just be bald and you're like, we start in-person learning tomorrow. This is bullshit. I still don't understand why I had to shave my head.
I'm like, should we meet? So 4 months from now, that would be after November 3rd. So that also may be.
Oh shit.
We
can do that. I might be, who knows? We might be crying. I mean, oh God, don't even get me started. Like, I can't. It's like, I mean, okay, why don't we got a couple more minutes. It's all right. Screw it. Oh, but like, I was like, I'm sorry. Like, both parties are driving me fucking crazy. Like, the fact that Trump, who is not a leader, like, I'm sorry, his position is leader of the free world, but he himself is not a leader. He doesn't inspire confidence. He does not unite. Like, I feel like that, for me, is what some basic criteria for leadership there. And Biden, and I'm like, God damn it, people! Like, no one. I have yet to see anyone on my post, anyone say like, "Hey, what's Biden saying right now?" Like, isn't he in like some weird bunker somewhere?
I don't know. I don't know because I haven't seen much either.
Yeah.
My friend actually posted something and I like messaged her back and was like, I need to read more about this. It was some like big plan. What was it, right? Like
like the progressive plans or proposals?
Yes.
Where
and
they immediately ruled out Medicare for all, so that's not part of the Democratic plan.
Well, because I was like reading this and I was like, cool that you got some of the right people in that, like AOC is in it, and the right names signed on, like the Bernie Sanders is joining with this. I'm like, okay, well, I just didn't really understand what it was. I'm like, cool, like first read, these sound great, but like, is this just like what is this? This is not actually happening. This sounds nice and hits all the buzzwords that.
I think it's like supposed to be his platform of like, hey, this is how I'm pulling the progressives in. But again, like for me, my two kind of bedrock issues is like Medicare for all and decriminalization of like controlled substances. And that's nowhere on these radars as far as I know.
I'll send you
send me this plan because
I will, because there was decriminalization of, was it medical marijuana?
Come on, just make it legal. God damn it.
There was I don't even want to. I like looked at it quickly and I was like, whoa, this seems like really heavy. I want to actually go and read what this is because I haven't seen anything shared anywhere.
Yeah.
And I saw some like New York Times headline articles that I didn't sit and read, but just that people are speculating that this could be a prime time for Biden to do some revolutionary things.
Yeah, well, if he did
the
universal
support.
basic income, I think you'd get a lot of support now.
So I just don't know.
I don't know.
Neither.
I mean, maybe I keep hearing that he's going to fly Warren. Like, people keep saying, like, oh, Warren's the top pick. And I'm like, well, like, he already has a nickname for her. Like, come on. Like, and the fact that she's like, oh, look, see, I told you I'm part Cherokee or something. I'm like, I'm sorry, like 0.01% isn't shit. Like, it's a genetic anomaly as far as I'm concerned. But I was like, the one person I think I heard someone mention like Tammy Duckworth. She's the veteran. And I was like, okay, I'd be okay with her. But that's really about it. I can't stand Kamala Harris, but that's because I work in education in the Bay Area. And if you vote for her, you know what you're voting for. Like, bye, single mothers. Yeah, that's fucked up. Anyway, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, whatever. We'll also keep in contact. So
yes.
I hope you actually get some time to like relax. I don't know when that happens, but I hear that shit happens.
It does. One of the blessings of all of this remote stuff is like I've been practicing yoga for a very long time, but I've been able to really do a whole bunch of yoga. I'm on my mat almost every day.
Oh, this is a virtual fist bump because I literally I've been on and off for years, and since this started, like for the past, I think I'm at 40 days straight yoga. So every day practicing.
I would be lost without it. So it's helped me in many ways. So yes.
Yeah, namaste. No, it's all good. All right, Florence.
Ooh, this is good. Thank you.
I love you and Chris. I hope you guys are doing good.
Yes, send hugs to all of your other household members and say hi to them and the babies.
Yeah, exactly. All right, have a good night. I'm going to stop recording and then I'll actually end it. But anyway, yeah, there's that. Bye, everybody.